Um, Sorry, I'm kind of nervous. We have the President of the United States here.
Well, thank you so much, Facebook, for hosting this, first of all. My name is Barack Obama, and I'm the guy who got Mark to wear a jacket and tie. And in fact, if you'd like, Mark, we can take our jackets off. Okay.
No, that's good.
Whew, that's better, isn't it?
So let's start off with the conversation about the debt, right? So I understand that yesterday morning you had a town hall in Virginia where you talked about your framework, not only for resolving the short-term budget issues, but the longer-term debt.
Right.
And you spent some time talking about tax reform and some cost cutting, but you also spent a lot of time talking about things that you didn't think that we could cut in education, infrastructure, and clean energy. So my question to kind of start off is, what specifically do you think we should do, and what specifically do you think we can cut in order to make this all add up?
Good. Right now, we face a critical time where we're going to have to make some decisions. How do we bring down the debt in the short term, and how do we bring down the debt over the long term? In the short term, Democrats and Republicans now agree we've got to reduce the debt by about $4 trillion over the next 10 years. And I know that sounds like a lot of money. It is. But it's doable if we do it in a balanced way. What I proposed was that about $2 trillion over 10 to 12 years is a reduction in spending. You know, government wastes, just like every other major institution does. And so there are things that we do that we can afford not to do. Now, there's some things that I'd like to do, are fun to do, but we just can't afford them right now. So we've made cuts in every area. A good example is Pentagon spending, where Congress oftentimes stuffs weapons systems in the Pentagon budget that the Pentagon itself says we don't need. But special interests and constituencies help to bloat the Pentagon budget. So we've already reduced the Pentagon budget by about $400 billion. We think we can do about another $400 billion. So we've got to look at spending, both on non-security issues as well as defense spending. And then what we've said is, let's take another trillion of that we raise through reforms in the tax system that allows people like me, and frankly, you, Mark, for paying a little more in taxes.
I'm cool with that.
I know you're okay with that. Keep in mind, what we're talking about is going back to the rates that existed when Bill Clinton was president. Now, a lot of you were I'm trying to say this delicately, still in diapers at that time, but for those of you who recall, the economy was booming, and wealthy people were getting wealthier. There wasn't a problem at that time. If we go back to those rates alone, that by itself would do a lot in terms of us reducing our overall spending. And if we can get $1 trillion on the revenue side, $2 trillion in cutting spending, we can still make investments in basic research. We can still invest in something we call ARPA-E, which is like DARPA, except just focused on energy, so that we can figure out what are the next breakthrough technologies that can help us reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. We can still make investments in education. So we've already expanded the Pell Grant program so that more young people can go to college. We're investing more in STEM education, math and science and technology education. We can still make those investments. We can still rebuild our roads and our bridges and invest in high-speed rail and invest in the next generation of broadband and wireless and make sure everybody has access to the internet. We can do all those things while still bringing down the deficit medium term. Now, there's one last component of this, and I know this is a long answer, but I want to make sure everybody had the basic foundations for it. even if we get this $4 trillion, we do still have a long-term problem with Medicare and Medicaid because healthcare costs, the inflation goes up so much faster than wages and salaries. And this is where there's another big philosophical debate with the Republicans, because what I've said is the best way for us to change it is to build on the health reform that we had last year and start getting a better bang for our healthcare dollar. We waste so much on healthcare. We spend about 20% more than any other country on earth, and we have worse outcomes because we end up having multiple tests when we could just do one test and have it shared among physicians on Facebook, for example. We could focus on the chronically ill. 20% of the patients account for 80% of the costs. So doing something simple like reimbursing hospitals and doctors for reducing their readmissions rate and managing somebody with a chronic illness like diabetes so that they're taking their meds on a regular basis so that they don't come to the emergency room, that saves huge amounts of money. So that's what health care reform was about last year or a year and a half ago. And what we want to do is build on that and continue to improve the system. What the Republicans right now are saying is, number one, they can't agree to any increases in taxes, which means we'd have to cut out of that $4 trillion, all of it would come from education, transportation, areas that I think are critical for our long-term future. So, for example, they propose 70% cuts in clean energy. Well, I don't know how we free ourselves in dependence on foreign oil, and anybody who's paying gas prices knows that there's an economic component to this as well as an environmental component to it, if we're not investing in the basic research and technology that allows solar, wind, and others to thrive and develop. At the same time, what they've said is, let's make Medicare into a voucher program so that retirees, instead of knowing that they're always going to have health care, they're going to get a voucher that covers part of the cost, and whatever health care inflation comes up is all going to be on them. And if the health insurance companies don't sell you a policy that covers your illnesses, you're out of luck. I think it is very important for us to have a basic social safety net for families with kids with disabilities, for seniors, for folks who are in nursing homes, and I think it's important for us to invest in our basic research. We can do all those things, but we're only going to be able to do it by taking a balanced approach, and that's what this big debate is about all about right now. All right?
All right, so, sorry, don't mean to cut off the applause.
No.
That was,
No.
it's a very thorough answer.
No. They were stunned by the length of that answer.